Welcome back to the channel, guys. Welcome to the channel. I have a special guest for you guys tonight. With all the stuff that's been going on around the country, with what's going on locally to us, I, you know, I wanted to bring this guy on. I've known him for over a year. A great guy, great reputation, good friend, super knowledgeable, super respected, and I wanted to bring him on because I believe this is the perfect time to bring him on to actually discuss some of the local stuff that's going on here in Loudoun County and nationally. So, without further ado, stay put, and we'll be right back. Mike,
Hey,
welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
hey, I'm doing pretty good. I appreciate you having me out. You're right. We've known each other for about a year. That's when I got involved in the whole school board mess that we're dealing with now.
Yes.
And I'm glad that I got this opportunity to answer some questions and kind of talk about what's going on.
Yeah, man. We continue to run into each other in like random places and random spots, and once I heard that you're running, I was like, you're the perfect fit. You've been around for so long in this community. You know this community well from your background. So I don't want to ruin your background. So I'll leave it up to you. Please, just give a little background of who you are, what did you do before, and what are you doing now, and what's your upcoming mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Michael Rivera. I'm running for school board in the Leesburg district here in Loudoun County. Um, I am a deputy with the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office. That's my passion. I always wanted to become a cop, and I started a little late in life. So although people say I look like I'm getting ready to retire, I'm at the beginning of my career. I'm an engineer by education, so I like to look at data and facts and analyze things. Uh, and I got involved about a year ago when I got wind of something that my son saw in school, which is essentially a racist video. And it had to do with critical race theory. And I know everyone says, oh, critical race theory doesn't exist. Well, like I said, I like to analyze things. So critical race theory has morphed into a lot of things since that time. And that's a whole other discussion that we could have just on that.
Yeah.
Uh, but what I see happening is that there are a lot of things going on in other school districts across the country. They're creeping into Loudoun. Some of those things have gotten already into Loudoun. I just started looking at some books that teachers have made me aware of, and basically they're books indoctrinating children to gender dysphoria. And so some people say, well, what's wrong with knowing about gender? Well, there's nothing wrong with treating people civilly and respecting what they want to be, but the school is no place to indoctrinate kids and to teach them how to transition genders. Kids are innocent by nature, and my job and what I see my mission is to protect the innocence of children. That's the bottom line. I mean, this crosses political parties, this crosses racial boundaries. Dimas, because you spoke up for your children, and that's a typical reaction of any father or mother when somebody says, you're talking to my child in this way. We raise kids. I mean, this is starting to get old, and people are like, well, all these parents' rights things are, we're tired of hearing about it. But parents raise children. School teachers and administrators do not raise our children. And that is something that not only I, but you and your friends and other people across the entire United States are saying very loud and very clear. And we're making strides, but that's my goal. I want to get on the school board because I think we need to go back to being pragmatic. We need transparency. We need safety in the schools relevant to what happened this week. And we need to just teach academics. I mean, what's going on? These are ideologies. These are social constructs. These are political agendas. This is not academics as you and I know it when we were growing up.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like the this whole um past, I want to say, past 2.5, 3 years, that the start. I mean, I sort of have to thank the pandemic for bringing this into light, from all the parents who started catching these so-called teachers pushing these ideologies and these propaganda material upon the kids, because they start catching them at the house. The kids listening to the teacher. The mom or dad walking on the kid, and they're talking about CRT. They're talking about gender. They're talking about sex. Talking about transgenders and all this stuff. So I sort of have to thank the pandemic for that, because if that wasn't the case, God knows when we were going to find out about all this stuff. Because part of indoctrination is basically you mold the mind to basically be uh uh what's the word I'm looking for. You basically have to be loyal to the person who's teaching you all the stuff, and disloyal to the people who are raising you.
Well, yeah, and let me make a clarification. The word itself, indoctrination, is not necessarily a bad word. It's a word, but the way, if you indoctrinate people into nefarious concepts, that's when it becomes evil. And that's how you and I use that word, because we look at indoctrination as having people do things that they don't necessarily believe in, or that you believe in heavily and you're trying to convince somebody. So sometimes you got to really explain these things to people, because people say, well, there's nothing, what are you talking about? Indoctrination, there's nothing wrong with it. Well, what I keep telling people is that everything that's going on, you really have to take a step back. I mean, we've got things coming from the White House.
Yeah.
We've got things coming from the federal government. The president went on television the other day and endorsed gender affirming care. And they soften the words, and they say these things, and they're changing the English language, and they modify the dictionary. Um, a perfect example is a pedophile. They're calling it a minor attracted person. So you water down the actual concepts, these things, you destroy the family unit, you remove parents from their kids' lives. So there's a lot of other things going on that are not just Loudoun County Public Schools, which is what I try and focus on. But part of the problem is that the explanation of these things is very academic, and it takes a lot longer than a 5 minute elevator speech. So that's my challenge in terms of getting to people and helping them understand. For example, I'll give you a perfect example. I got titles of some books the other day from some teachers.
Hmm.
One of them is in an elementary school, and it's about a teddy bear that is feeling sad, and then tells his owner that I don't feel like a boy, I feel like a girl. And so the way they pass it off is to say, well, what's wrong with being tolerant of other people? Well, it's okay to be tolerant of other people. I agree. It's sort of like there was a book that I read to my son. I Love You, Stinky Face. It was about an alligator or a monster that lived in a swamp, and the boy loved the monster. Right? You know, that's not transgender ideology. That's a monster. That's someone that looks different than you, and it teaches the same lesson. Uh, but this
It's a
book,
fiction. It's
yeah,
fiction.
yeah. But this book is, teaching the teddy bear wants to be a girl. And some people say it's not a big deal. Well, why is this in an elementary school? It's clearly an elementary school book. It's got big pictures, it's got very few words. And so these are the things that over the next couple of board meetings I'm going to be bringing to light, along with another book called Seeing Gender. It's basically an LGBTQ guide to becoming transgender, and doing all sorts of things. And I ordered the book from Amazon because I'm going to read it. Uh,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to read it at school board meetings. And then I'm going to post it on Facebook. And I need to get people to understand what's going on. It's not all good, you know?
Yeah, and I believe it was either yesterday or the day before. I think it was yesterday that the administration put out an announcement stating that if schools who are receiving federal funds, if they don't start letting boys into girls' bathrooms, locker rooms, and any other private area where the girls are, they will stop the federal funding for their food. They will
Well,
take the
so
food away.
it's interesting. I haven't read about it, but what I'm from what you told me from the headlines, that sounds about right.
I read it. I
They're
read the whole
prob
thing.
they're probably asking that schools be transgender tolerant, right, in order
Correct.
to receive federal funding. So they put the language to make it sound like it's the right thing to do. But you're absolutely right. Basically, in Loudoun County, policy 8040 did exactly that. And people say, well, there's nothing wrong in Loudoun County. Well, we passed a policy in the midst of turmoil while parents were angry, while sexual assaults were occurring. And that policy not only allows opposite sex kids to go into other bathrooms, but it says that teachers don't have to tell parents what's going on. That's the worst part about it. But it's a policy. It's currently in Loudoun County Public Schools, and everybody's
Hmm.
just kind of going around there about their business because they forgot about it.
I haven't forgotten about it. I know it's still there.
Yeah,
I
I
have not
forgot
forgotten
about it.
about it.
Yeah,
And the fact that, and that brings us to the next point where the court just threw out the case last week where we were trying to remove the chair and the vice chair, Brenda and Atusa, from their position, and the court came and threw it out, saying that there was no substance in the case. Which, I mean, what more substance do they want? Do they want, like, they covered up the story because the policy was coming up for a vote. The 8040 policy was coming up for a vote. This is exactly what the problem was. And Brent and what's her face? Uh,
Atusa.
no, no, the one just resigned.
Oh, Beth Bartz.
Beth Bartz. She was the one that turned around to the superintendent asking her, did we have any incidents in our bathrooms that these people are so worried about it? And this had happened after the incidents. She's made that statement after this, and she was on the emails that went out that the incident happened, and
You're,
she had the nerve to come out and say, "Did we had any?" So they all lied to the public while we were questioning the motive of 8040.
you're you're
Correct.
absolutely you're absolutely right. The
So
fact that there were lies has come out. We know that for a fact. Like, this is not fake news. This is not conjecture. Everybody on sitting up there on the board had gotten emails about the assault through
correct.
freedom of information requests. We know this. So I've sort of gotten past trying to convince people that the board is lying. I know it. Everybody knows it. So I'm not. I don't waste any more energy on that. What I think needs to happen is that they need to be removed through legal methods, like we were doing. And a tweet had gone out from the Democratic Party regarding the selection of that particular judge that threw out the case, and
Yes.
deleted.
Yes.
However, someone took a screenshot of it and put it back up, and there was apparently a phone bank. And I don't know if that phone bank was soliciting to appoint a judge in an expedient manner or appoint that judge. In
Yeah.
any case, it doesn't smell good, right? And so hopefully this comes up in a grand jury investigation, because if you have a recall process and you can't get it through the courts, what's the good of having the recall process? It's
Exactly.
almost it's just
The-
there for ink and paper.
well, everybody recused themselves to a point
Exactly.
that you had to have a Supreme Court assign somebody to the case. I've never seen that happen
Yeah.
in a local court, for that matter.
But on a positive note, um, I've told people, and everybody should know, this is a marathon. This is not a sprint, and this is one bump in the road, and it's okay, because I know, and and other people in the county know that Brenda Sheridan and Atusa Reeser have lied to the parents. Um, Brenda Sheridan is going through all sorts of hell with the neglect on her Title I schools in Sterling. The Hispanic population there, I'm not a betting man, but I'd bet some money that the non-English speaking Hispanic population that uses the schools in her district have no idea who she is or what she's doing.
I'm willing to put money on that too.
And that to me, that is racism, right? That's
Of course.
exactly antithetical to what they say about equity. You have a suburban um, Caucasian woman that is elected probably by mostly Caucasians in a district that's predominantly Hispanic, poor, and immigrant, and she is neglecting her schools while all the while running around sitting on her throne and acting like she's doing all these great things. To me, that's even worse than her lying to me as a parent. I'm an adult, I can take that. But the children that are suffering at her hand deserve better.
Yeah, but Mike, here's my issue. Sure, we could take the criticism, we could take the stupidity of their action, sure. But the fact that that stupidity is having an impact on the children, and we can't stop it like right now, and we have to wait until election time, that to me that's absurd. And that goes back to the point that the court system is not even working properly.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I
You
think
know
that
what I mean?
I
Yes,
think
we
I
could
think
remove these
yeah,
people. Sure, sure. Yeah, vote. Yeah, remove them. But there's a reason there's a recall process also set in place. Like if these people are not handling their position correctly, if they're not delivering based on what needs to be delivered, and they're only tailoring to a very small minority group, because the LGBTQ is not majority. They are minority in the entire country. They are, and look at the amount of noise they have made to basically change every aspect of this country's social construct.
that's a very good point, because when I was looking up statistics about percentages of population as it relates to transgender folks, and again, don't get me wrong, this is America. I love this country, and you can be anything you want, and
Absolutely.
and I will respect you for being whoever you want. You just don't. You just can't teach my kids to be what you want, right? So the population is um, tenths or smaller than a percent of the entire population in the state of Virginia, and it carries through in the school. Last time I looked, when I looked on LCPS at the stats, because they give a gender population table. This is on LCPS website, and I think it's 0.01% or
Yeah.
0.1% of the population of all LCPS students
Yeah.
identify as trans or non-male female, whatever. So we have caused all this trouble for less than 1% of the population. Now, we had things in place for bullying and abuse and slanderous language. That was already there.
Yeah.
But they decided to just take it one step further and throw it in our face, and here we are, still talking about it. But I think that case is a bump in the road. I think that we're going to move on. I think parents are not dissuaded at all. I'm not. To me, I'm not worried about it. It happened. I'm not worried about it.
No, look. I'm not worried either. The issue is it hasn't affected us. Like it hasn't affected me directly. It hasn't affected you directly, but it has affected some families directly because of these policies.
Oh, I don't doubt it. Yes, I
You know
agree.
what I mean? And if we are gonna go in it as a team, we have to go in it as a team. So basically, if they are affected, we are affected to
Yeah,
to a certain
yeah.
to a
I'm,
certain
I'm
point.
not saying. I'm not. Yeah, I'm not saying that.
Yeah, and look,
Yeah,
as far as the LGBTQ community, or the alphabet community, I like to call it, because they just keep adding letters to this thing. My whole thing is, I don't care how you live your life. I don't care what you do. I don't care what you do behind closed doors. I don't care who you're attracted to. I don't really care, to be honest with you. What I care is when you start shoving it down my throat and telling me I have to accept it. I don't have to accept anything. This is the beauty of this country. I do not have to accept how you live.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I could abuse you, or I should harass you about it. No, you do what you do, I do what I do.
Yeah.
Don't come and tell me how to adapt to your situation.
Well, it's basically, I mean, if you use an analogy, it's like, well, um, I don't, I am well, and this is relevant because this kind of goes towards the whole COVID thing. Um,
Yeah,
I have a breathing disorder, and whenever I'm in a room, I have to open windows. So now, everywhere I go, I'm gonna force everyone to open the windows in their houses, in their schools, in the professional buildings, in cars, because it's just for me.
you're right.
That's sort of the lunacy of this. It's like everyone needs to adjust for a small population that is now, and if they incorporate this into Title IX and create gender as a protected class, and move away from actual biological sex, that is going to be disastrous to the United States, because that's going to set a precedence that if I want to create some sort of protected class, I can just create one, and all of a sudden
Well,
I get all these rights and privileges that are not necessarily equal.
that will blow up in their face so quick. It's not
Yeah,
even funny.
yeah, but it's happening. I mean, these
But
things.
it's fine because look, I
Yeah,
could play the same game. I could play the game all day.
yep. The government
You know
is.
what I mean? It's sort of saying, look, I have certain beliefs and you have to obey it by them. You have to do it. You have if you tell me I need to live like you, or I need to accept the fact that this is how I'm supposed to act when you are around, then I'm gonna make you do the same thing. It's it's a simple equal opportunity, right? So
You're
if they
right.
tell me that you need to address me by my proper pronouns, whatever the hell your pronouns are, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna give myself adjectives. I'm gonna like make them as most uncomfortable as possible.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's no different. It's
It's
no different.
stupidity.
It's no different than a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew forcing everyone to follow that religion, right?
Correct.
Because it's essentially, I mean, it's a religion of transgenderism in some respects, uh, but we don't do that. We don't teach religion in school, right? So how is it you can't teach religion, but you can teach an ideology that is a social construct? Because even transgender folks that speak on it say it is a social construct. You believe
Yeah.
you are something other than what you are. But again, it is what it is. My goal is to get all of these ideologies, the racist dogma, and the political agendas out of the school system, and let's just go back to teaching kids math, science, reading, etc. That's it's not. I'm not trying to change the world. This is really simple.
And I think that was my argument when I first went up to the school board and made the because that's when this is right before they passed the 80/40 bill. And I went up. I honestly I had a speech prepared for like for 1 minute, then I realized I had two. So you
Yeah, yeah,
know when I was done with my first segment, I was like, okay, I got about a minute and a half, so I'm just gonna free flow it because I at that time I was speaking out of my heart. I don't have anything to read off of. The fact, I mean, what I had was what I thought of, like how I felt, but anything after that was actually truly how I felt. And that's when I started coming out and saying, like, hey, why don't you just teach the necessary stuff for these kids to thrive in society? Because look, all these confusion, it's creating mental illness.
oh,
These kids don't have directions.
you're absolutely right. I mean,
These kids are so confused as they are going into these classrooms, into these schools. you know a kid's mind is like a sponge, but what happens is half of the sponge dries up. It becomes hard, like you can't, it doesn't absorb anything anymore. Then you have just another one, like it's semi-soft and sort of absorbing thing. Then at one time it's not going to absorb anything anymore. It's just going to dry out.
Yeah. Well,
So we need to keep their minds active on academic stuff, not social stuff.
yeah.
Yes, socializing is important. I'm not saying it's not important, but when you try to recreate a society that's been around for thousands of years, you know, and the fact that, look, gays have been around for centuries. Being
Oh,
gay is not
absolutely.
a new thing. We all know that. It is not a new thing. It's been around for centuries. But now, gender neutrality, where the hell is that coming from? Gender liquidity, what is this? Like, you go by the flow, whatever your surrounding genders are, you're gonna oblige, and all of a sudden you're gonna identify as, I don't know, a dinosaur for a sec for example. If you're around dinosaurs, you can't do that. This is against logical thinking.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, when I got exposed, I was like, I honestly, I think this society is deteriorating at a faster level than I thought it was. And I have to say, social media is it's mainly the fault of it. Social media has been opening up these ideologies to children, and children not being filtered
Yeah. I mean,
as being exposed to these things.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that what's going on is, I think it's a cancer on society. I
Yeah,
think that social media is feeding it, and like I said, I think it's coming from the White House. It's coming from the federal government. Um, it's coming from the state government. It's coming from the local government. This is
yeah,
all being pushed on people, and people don't realize that once you capture young adults, once you capture children, you have now a generation of zombies. And so think about the fact that affluent white kids are graduating from college, have graduated over the last 5 years, and when they graduate, they hate their parents and they hate America. However, they went to American schools, they took part in American culture, they exercised freedom of speech. So that's not an accident. These kids were indoctrinated decades ago. Like
yeah,
we're at least two generations behind of something that's been going on in the schools, starting in California and working its way across the United States.
yeah,
And until we reverse this course, we are essentially graduating non-thinkers. We're graduating social justice warriors. We're not graduating critical thinkers. We're not graduating people that are ambitious and want to work and want to be entrepreneurs and want to learn.
yeah.
Graduating people that are going to be sheeple and follow the next big thing in order to be in a riot or a peaceful demonstration so that you can be recognized on social media and not get canceled. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think that's going to be the downfall of our society. And from growing, I grew up in Iran until I was 13 years old, and I've been in this country for the past 30 years. And every time, like, because I used to see all this stuff, kids leaving their home at age 18, right? And I used to, tell my parents, just to mess with it. Oh, I'm gonna leave as soon as I turn 18. I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna get my own place. And in our society, in our environment where we grew up, that's not the right thing to do. You don't just leave the house when you turn 18,
Yeah.
because they still don't think you as a responsible individual.
Hmm.
So most of the people who left their home was majority when they got married.
Yeah.
So at age 28, 26, around those time frame where, kids left their parents' home, it was for purpose of marriage. Now, yes, higher education, sometimes they had to go to like a different province or different city to go to school. But no matter how long the drive was, even if it was an hour drive, they had to come back home.
Yeah.
No dormitories or whatever. So, um, and that was the way of life. I mean, now here it's completely different. At 18, you sign up to college. It's in a different state. You go and you live on your own, and you basically you become who you surround yourself with, or what you actually want to do in life. Which again, it's not a bad thing. The where it starts off from is from elementary school all the way to high school.
But that's a good point. I think that's a cultural thing, and I know a lot of cultures are like that, where um, children have a responsibility to the family
Yes,
before going off, and even in some cases, you get married and you and your wife still live with your parents because
yes,
you take care of your parents. And a lot of Asian cultures are like that, and some Hispanic countries are like that. So I agree. The United States is a little bit different. Um, but if you lose the parental bond with kids as a result of sending them to public school, then you've lost everything.
absolutely.
Because even my son, he's 13, and we love on him, and we talk to him, and we tell him what's going on, and he understands. And to us, it's very important that he understands the importance of family and the importance of respect for your elders and accepting people. And we want him to stay around as long as possible, but at some point he's going to leave. But if people leave their kids to public school and teachers start acting like, and there was one that had said the other day online, um, we are essentially the parents. In some cases, these kids need a second set of need parents, and we are the parents, and their parents are just an obstacle. That's kind of like someone telling, you're married to your wife, someone walking up to you and said, I'm really her husband, you're just paying the bills.
Yeah.
Like that's how ludicrous that is.
Well, and also you got, and this goes to our next thing that we were going to talk about the school shooting in Texas, where now the teachers are saying, "Oh, I thought you guys said, we are not your kids' parents and we're not responsible for your children. Now you want us to protect them."
Yeah,
Because there's talks about arming the teachers and all that stuff, but you
yeah.
know,
I was just talking to our mutual friend Joe Mobley just a few minutes ago about this as well, and I'm very skeptical about what happened. I'm not saying it didn't happen, so let's not, just so for everyone out there
no,
looking.
it happened.
Yeah, yeah.
It definitely happened.
But what I'm saying is that the way the information is trickling out, the way the media is twisting things, I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. So I'm not going to say that anybody did something wrong or somebody did this, somebody did that, because I wasn't there. It's a very traumatic situation. The only
Yes.
thing that I was really upset the other day when one of our board of supervisors, Julie Brisman, put out a tweet that says, we don't want more police in schools, basically demonizing the sheriff's office as a political way to get her jab in. And I wrote an email to the entire board of supervisors saying, is this all you have? Is this the best you can do? 14 or more, I think it might have been 18 kids, 18 children were killed in violent gunfire. And all that some politicians can do is get up there to try and campaign. Like, why don't you give it a couple of weeks, give it a month. Things are not that you have to rush through this. And maybe offer to go out and meet with parents, send money to these families to help bury their children. But
Mike,
we
sorry to cut you off, but the Democrats' punchline is don't ever let a crisis go to waste.
You're absolutely right.
That's their punchline. They've said it 1,000 times. They've said elections have consequences. They've said it 1,000 times. They keep repeating the same thing. And you know, uh, I went, I legit on from Wednesday. I went on a back and forth discussion or argument, whatever you want to call it, with a bunch of people. And I was arguing the fact that number one, one person will say, "Oh, the school had armed guards and blah blah blah." No, it didn't. It did not have armed guards. Because then they're like, "Oh, they gave me like some screenshots from like the news and about that." Then all of a sudden, when the reports came out, no armed guards. The cops waited 1 hour before they did anything. Uh, it was the border patrol who stormed the school to take the guy out while the cops were there. So, and this is one question I was going to ask you. Uh, when deputies are called on an active shooting scene, are they trained to handle an active shooter of any kind?
So,
To a certain point, I want to say I don't want to say, now they're going to go into a battle, like it's not a front, it's not like, you got 15 people shooting. Let's say just one active shooter, and you have six police officers. Are they trained for a scenario that they can actually engage active shooter?
well, part of the problem is that there are a lot of people um, creating artificial scenarios about what happened, and um, I'm not trusting anything that I'm hearing from the media. Now, with regards to active shooter incidents, at some point in time, after one of the last tragic ones, training across law enforcement agencies changed, and a lot of law enforcement agencies are trained to go into the gunfire.
Okay.
However, there are assessments that need to be made. So these are half second, quarter second assessments of, is there one shooter? Are there multiple shooters? Where are they located? What information do we have? So I think that it's really hard. It's really hard to just say this one size fits all. But I think it's fair to say that a lot of departments are now training that when there is an active shooter, um, police officers that get on scene go in and look for the shooter.
Hmm.
But again, I don't know. I don't know what the conditions were on the ground. I don't know if they thought he was barricaded or if they thought it was active or whatever, because some reports said all the gunshot happened at the beginning. Some
Yeah.
reports said there was gunshots throughout. Those things make a big difference.
Yeah.
If there's no gunshots, that's not an active shooter,
Right.
right? And even though people say, well, but wait a minute, the active shooter killed people. But if there's no gunshots going on, I mean, the term itself, active shooter, means that it's active. And
Right.
so I don't know at what point the gunshots ended. So um, I just can't say, and I don't have enough information to judge what happened on the ground. All I know is that it shouldn't have happened. And
Hmm.
and to me, my opinion is that mental health is a big part of this. This shouldn't be. I know we're going to go down the gun control route for certain political parties, but the mental health issue in the United States has reached critical levels whereby young kids, young adults, are having mental problems where they feel the need to do these things.
Yeah.
We need to address that. We need to figure out, where is the system going wrong? Are we not providing services? Are these kids being abused as children? Are they coming from broken families? Is the education system not working? We need to solve that problem. To me, that is the core of the problem.
Well, his thing was he came from a broken family. He wasn't living with his mom and dad.
Hmm.
I don't think the dad was in the picture either. He got into an argument with the grandma over a cell phone bill, and he shot her.
Yes.
So, and supposedly she was in critical condition. I think she passed. I'm not sure. I don't know. Like I haven't read,
She
but
was for a while because she was talking to police. I think she might have made a 911 phone call. The other
right,
thing we need to realize is, and I don't know if you know this, so when 911 phone calls come in from a bunch of different sources, you don't know that there's part of a puzzle. So you
correct.
don't necessarily associate one call with the other, even though in hindsight, the media and you and I can say, hey, look, these two calls came in. Why didn't they know that they were the same person? So
Yeah,
I give a lot of credit to the 911 operators because they have a very difficult job and they have to solve problems while talking about a problem. And so
yeah,
that's part of what happened in terms of delays, right? And so you always
yeah,
get that delay from there were some gunshots in Sterling, and now there's an active robbery in Percival, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh wow, these two incidences are going on. What you don't know is that the gunshots from Sterling is the same person that drove to Percival.
Yeah.
And you don't know this till after the fact, which is why now we have a lot of armchair quarterbacks and Geraldo Rivera, who's been in business for 50 years, and he says, "I've been around for 50 years," and it's like, yeah, but you're not a law enforcement officer, you're not a tactical operator, you don't understand what happened, and most importantly, you weren't there.
Yeah.
So it's a very sad thing. Um, and I can't even imagine what it's like to lose a 6, 7, or 8 year old child. I mean,
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's and I would love to do a ride along with you one day. Like, if you're on patrol or whatever, I would love to come along and just see a day of what goes on.
yeah, we
As
do it. You can sign up for it. I'll get with you offline. You can do it. It's interesting. I mean, I was just thinking to myself, um, you strap on about 30 pounds worth of gear. Yeah,
Mhm.
we're trained for it. It's our job. But
Right.
let's just talk about it. You strap on 30 pounds worth of gear. You're in a patrol car for 12 hours, in and out
Yeah.
of the car. You're dealing with people at their worst moments.
Yeah.
And then you have a whole bunch of people heckling you, asking you to make, decisions that they would have made, but they don't
Yeah.
have all of the other things. And I'm not making excuses for police. I'm just saying that it's not your typical job,
No,
and
absolutely, absolutely. And look, the whole discussion started with me saying I think uh, schools should have more police presence on campus, meaning at least one or two police cars parked or running or whatever, with at least one or two bodies, scoping the area.
yeah,
That at least creates a deterrence or an obstacle for anybody that wants to do. And look, it's not going to stop a person who has an agenda. This person has already made up their mind and they're going to do what they want to do. But there could be that moment where they see a car, police car, when they see a police body, they're like, "Oh shit,
yeah,
I was not expecting this."
yeah. I agree. I
You
agree.
know what I mean? And I got upset because look, this administration just shipped out 54 billion dollars worth of money to Ukraine, and they have the audacity to come and say we don't have enough funding for police, or have police at schools.
Makes
And
Yeah, makes no sense at all.
right,
And
right, because they can print money for a war that we shouldn't have anything to do with,
yeah,
because that's a different discussion for a different day, because
yeah.
I have a lot of feelings about that one.
And if you
So
look at surrounding jurisdictions, Alexandria removed school resource officers. I think Montgomery County, Maryland, was fighting about taking them out of schools,
Mhm.
uh, all because of this equity, social justice, prison to pipeline, school to prison pipeline. And what they're finding out is that
Didn't
violent.
Loudoun County remove them?
Excuse me.
Didn't Loudoun County remove the police officers from the schools?
No, we have school resource officers in the schools. We have them in the schools.
My kids don't.
Your kid goes to elementary school.
Yeah.
I think elementary schools are covered by a middle school resource officer, so they cover two schools. And I'm
How
not,
is that? I,
so don't quote me on this, but I believe that in order to put more officers in the schools, it needs to be funded by the board of supervisors. I believe that that's the way it works, because the sheriff's
yeah,
office budget approved by the board of supervisors. So I'm sure it's going to be a conversation that's going to come up, and I encourage parents to reach out
absolutely.
to the office and say, "Hey, how do we get more resource officers and put them into elementary schools?"
I totally agree, and I want that. I went to high school in California, in like the most heavily gang infested area,
Yeah.
heavily,
Hmm.
and we had cops there, but there was always shooting. Not on campus, off campus.
Yeah.
Right next to the school, there was a huge park, and that was the gang battleground. And there was always shooting there. There was always 2 or 3 units parked outside of the school every day, morning until school's out. And the shooting will still happen. There was always arguments. There was always fights. Then I went to a different school, which was in a different area. It was a lot more calmer. It was not heavily gang infested. In
Hmm.
fact, we had no gangs there. Um, but we still had 2 units actively going around. The schools were 100% fenced off.
Yeah.
They had a fence around the schools,
Yeah.
which didn't allow. And this was a high school I went to, not even a minute, but every school in in Los Angeles County has a fence around it. Every school, to a point that kids had to figure out a way, if they wanted to ditch school, they had to jump the fence.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? But
Yeah. And I think it's going to be an ongoing conversation again because
and again, I don't mind having a fence around the school. I think that's a great security tool to have. Even a fence, it's enough to deter somebody from entering.
yeah, yeah.
And uh,
I think we got a. I think there's going to be a lot of discussion about it because Loudoun County is probably not the only county that doesn't have SROs in elementary schools, and that
right,
I'm sure other counties work that way. But what I was going to say was that those other counties, like Alexandria, where they took the SROs out of the school, they saw spikes in crime. They saw spikes in crime between students, fighting, gang activity, etc. And now they're reconsidering it. They're like, oh, we need to put the SROs back in the school. So this whole defund the police movement and get rid of the police and demonize the police has completely backfired because that movement adversely affected the exact people that political party is saying that they want to protect: black and brown and Hispanic people, right? And
but
when you take the police out of Baltimore City and Southeast DC, who suffers? The people in Baltimore City and in Southeast DC, not Nancy Pelosi, not Chuck Schumer, not all these other people that live in gated communities with armed guards.
and look, they don't care about the blacks. They don't care about the Hispanics. They don't care about the Asians. The only thing they care about is their position. And this goes for every single politician on both sides of the aisle.
Oh,
I'm an equal opportunity offender, Mike. I don't take sides. I go with what society needs to react and act like, which we call ourselves civilized, but we act as uncivilized on many occasions. Because again, this goes back to people who scream the loudest and they're the smallest, right? And what happens is, BLM, for example, BLM is day in, day out, every day, oh, the scandal of this, oh, the money on this, oh, they bought mansions, oh, they throw parties, you've seen it, it comes out. And these are the crooks of the nation. The premise behind BLM was, okay, yes, injustice act towards the black. Fine. What are you going to do about it? You raise $90 million. How are you helping the community?
no, you're
You're
right.
not,
There's a lot
right?
of investigations trying to figure out where all the money went, right?
Right,
Where did all that money go? And even Don Lemon on CNN was challenged, and they challenged him and said, "What about the black boys and girls that are dying daily in Chicago, right?
correct.
At the hands of other black gangbangers and criminals, not police. They're killing themselves because it's gang violence." And
Right.
he said, "Black Lives Matter is for white officers killing black people. if you want to have your own Black Lives Matter for these kids, then you need to start another group.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
he's quoted saying that, like, Black Lives
I've
Matter
heard it.
is
I
for
absolutely heard it.
people. It's not for all Black people. So to say Black Lives Matter is to say some Black Lives Matter, and only the ones that make the television and make it look good politically.
Yeah,
Uh,
and look, when us we stood up, we started challenging the school board. Our message was unified without even coordinating with one another. Us parents who went against the school board last year, our messages, almost all of us, was unified,
mhm.
and none of us knew one another. None of us called one another to say, "Hey, this is the talking point. Say this or say that. This is what you need to say." I didn't know anybody. I met Joe last year. I met you last year. I met a bunch of parents last year. I didn't know any of those parents, but
Yep,
yet our message was almost identical.
that's a good point.
With little bit different variation, but the message was very very identical. We were not coming at you rehearsed. We were not trying to tell you, hey, this is only me. I'm saying this. So we came out different colors, different ethnicity, different backgrounds, with the same message that our kids are hurting. But we were not just speaking of for our kids, we were speaking as a community, because we are now saying our entire community is hurting because of your dumb policies. So that community holds blacks, Hispanic, Asians, Indians, Iranians, Arabs, Muslims, Christians, Jews, Hindus, whatever you want to call it. It's all part of it. So when we say those when we said those things, that we continue to say the same things. We continue to push that message. Is we didn't start a fund. We didn't start a nonprofit organization to collect money for it, because a nonprofit is not going to fix the problem. It's the politicians and the people who are sitting on these, you know, authoritarian seats, who they just want to make the decision and make everybody's life a living hell, because now they're holding a grudge because half the county doesn't like them.
Well, that's an interesting perspective, and I appreciate that. I hadn't looked at it that way. You're absolutely right. It was an organic movement, right?
It's
Um,
organic.
you and I did not know each other. You had spoken a couple of times, and I talked to a mutual friend, and I said, "Hey, who's this guy?" She said, "He's a good guy. I know him." And little by little, we all met each other, and we did not start a nonprofit. We did not start an organization. There are some organizations now, but the fact of the matter is that our message was always the children, right?
Correct.
Every single parent that gets up and speaks is speaking for their kids who do not have a voice. And so that's a good point, because we've been accused of being a right-wing conspiracy, a Trump, a Trump conspiracy, when that couldn't be further from the truth, because there are people within our group that hate Trump, that don't
Has
like any
nothing to do with Trump, though. This was this, but
thing.
the only person who has a an organization, it's Ian, but that's for the legal purposes. Just to fund the legal process, because it's not cheap to fund a legal process.
Oh yeah, yeah. But I'm
You
just
know
saying,
what I mean? He's
they're very wide.
that's fine. Like, I don't have a problem with it, but it's
Yeah,
not a multi-million-dollar organization. But
yeah.
then you have a multi-million-dollar organization throw lawyers at us when we take them to court. What was it? NAACP? Is that what it was?
Yeah, ACP. So the irony of that is that the school board is using our taxpayer money to pay for lawyers to fight against us.
Right.
That's exactly what's happening now. And people say, well, that's the insurance company and this and that. Well, part of it is, but we pay insurance premiums. And I would bet that as the liability of insurance, as the liability of legal claims increases, our premiums are probably going to go up.
Of
Right.
course.
And so How ironic is that, that we're in court fighting Sheridan and Reeser, and the lawyers sitting at the table, we're
It's
paying.
paid by us.
Yeah, we're paying for the.
But that's exactly my point, Mike. See, a lot of people don't look at it that way, and for and look, I have been called racist, and it was funny because on Facebook, one guy he's like, "Oh, you're racist, you're a right winger, you're this, you're this, you're this." I responded, I was like, "Please explain to me how you are not a racist, and use facts instead of emotions."
Yeah, yeah,
No response. Because if I say, "Oh, I'm not a racist," they're like, "Oh, by saying you're not a racist, you're definitely are a racist." So
yeah,
I asked them the question, "Tell me how you are not a racist," and that was it.
yeah. All you heard was crickets.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because
Well,
they are.
so along those lines, recently, Hung Kao won the Republican nomination to fight against Jennifer Wexton, right? And the
Yeah,
Board of Supervisors, Phyllis Randall identified him and said he is a threat to democracy, right? And so she stands for equity and Black Lives Matter and diversity and LGBTQ, but she said that Hung Kao is a threat to democracy, right?
yeah,
Hung Kao, an immigrant that came to this country with nothing, that fought for this country, that is a decorated veteran, that
yeah,
has more degrees than Phyllis can count on her two hands, and academic accolades.
yeah.
He threat to democracy, and people sort of let this go off their shoulders and they don't pay attention. That's a pretty profound statement and an insult to an individual that came to America to live and is living the American dream and is not even from this country, yet she stands for equity and diversity and inclusion and all
Hmm.
these things, right? But when it's time to put people's feet to the fire, it's the same equity of the Hispanic kids in Sterling, right? We're going to do equity for everybody except the Hispanic non-English speakers in Sterling, right?
Uh, so, Mike, I have a word of advice for you. I know you're going into this. You're gonna go into this battlefield. I say this is their game. Play their game, but play it better and beat them at their game. And challenge their own ideology by throwing it back in their face. That's my advice. I don't know. I don't have a strategic way of explaining it, but I'm sure you know what I mean. But before we go, do you have any final thoughts for the audience?
Well, like I said, I appreciate you having me on here. It's a long discussion. I mean, you and I can probably talk for hours, and
Yes.
there's a lot going on in the world. I like to believe that there's some hope and that we can regain our school board, that we can regain our state legislature, that we can regain the White House, and turn the country around. Because I'm not only worried about our kids, I'm worried about our country, and I think a lot
Okay.
are worried about our country. And I think as Americans and as patriots, we need to stand up and fight for everything that our country stands for. And at the end of the day, I don't care what you want to call me. I'm an American, I'm a patriot, and I love the United States.
Mike, thank you for coming in, folks. Mike Rivera, he's running for the Loudoun County School Board position. Please give him a support. I will link the websites and everything down in the description. Uh, Mike, again, thank you for coming in. I will have you on as we get closer to the race,
Sounds good.
or if you have any special message, go, from now until the race is over. I would love to bring you on, so you can relay your message. But thank you again. Have a great weekend. Appreciate it, and we definitely will have you back.
Thank you, sir.